Hello, guys. Welcome to the first virtual 2022 Ward 20 debate in the city of Toronto. Uh, you know, it's in Scarborough, guys. Uh, I love Scarborough. I lived there for a year, so it's important. It's part of Toronto, and it needs to be recognized, and it needs to be taken care of. So I am your host, Matthew King. With me today is my new co-host, Ebony. She just stepped away for a moment. And, this debate is brought to you guys and all of the listeners by the podcast This Time in History and by our sponsor, which is a not-for-profit called Triumph Over Trauma. They're a not-for-profit that I started to address the serious lack of accessibility to free mental health therapy in the province of Ontario. We're in our funding stage right now. If you guys go and follow us on Twitter or Instagram, there's a GoFundMe page or a link. If you guys could share it, that'd be great. It will be included in the show notes along with both of your websites. So there's that to look forward to. Guys, so going back to the not-for-profit for a second. Now, this not-for-profit is going to see everybody, no matter of income, age, sex, race, gender, does not matter. So with that, here are the rules. The debate is going to consist of 4 categories. You'll have an opening statement and a closing statement. Inside the 4 categories, there'll be 2 questions each, asked back to back. You'll have a chance to answer, and then we can debate. In the event that somebody else joins us, as everybody was invited to this debate, we will accompany them and catch them up to speed. In the meantime, let's get started. And on behalf of Ebony, she and I wish you all the luck. So let's start off with Philip. Go ahead with your opening statement.
All right, sounds good. Hey guys,
hold on one second, Ebony.
My name is Philip Mills. Okay.
No, nope. Philip. Wait, Ebony, you got some feedback.
Oh, did I? I just wanted to say hi. You can't hear me?
No, I can hear you. It's just that for some reason there was some feedback.
Oh, is it better now?
I think she got it.
Yeah. It's better now.
I can't hear it now. Yeah.
Okay, so
I just wanted to say hi, everybody, and I'm glad to be here. Just my one daughter is sick, so I'm just kind of running around in the background taking care of kids for a moment. We're gonna go get her some Tylenol.
Awesome. I just when they're done giving their opening statements, Ebony, I'm just going to need you to ask your question, but we have time until then. Go ahead, Philip.
Okay. My name is Philip Mills. I've lived in Scarborough Southwest for the past 10 years. I work downtown as a concierge supervisor. I've said before I make $40,000 a year, and the city is an expensive city, and it's crushing to live in the city as it is. And I feel like I'd like to be a voice for lower income people who are on Ontario Works, people on ODSP, unhoused people. I don't feel like there's that representation of those people on city council. So I feel like that's my number one priority, is those our most vulnerable communities.
Thank you. Corey, it's your turn. Go ahead. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm Corey David. I grew up in Scarborough Southwest. I've lived there for about 20 of the past 30 years. I've lived downtown a bit off in between those times. I'm currently a machinist working in metal fabrication in Scarborough, near Progress Road in Markham. I've always considered myself a socialist, but about 6 years I became active politically through Socialist Action and through the NDP. I started educating and participating in actions and demonstrations and organizing. I was arrested last year for defending homeless people or houseless people at Lamport Stadium and beaten by police. I've also agree with Philip that the city is expensive, and I think there's clear reasons for it. I think that you can see sort of the parasitic practices of developers and corporations that the city itself has facilitated over the past decades, really. So I think that needs to be a stop. I think that there needs to be a serious investment in social housing. In fact, I think that social housing should take the place of a corporate housing. So that's one of the pillars of my campaign, along with getting rid of the terrible carceral system, which targets minorities and poor people across the city. So yeah, I ran last year in the by-election in Scarborough Agent Court, and that's a brief summary of my experience.
Well, thank
Thanks.
you for joining us, and thank you again, Philip, for joining us as well. Ebony, if you can hear me, do you have your question ready? Okay, so we'll start with my. Oh, here we go.
Was it
It's for
City Hall culture?
City Hall culture, exactly.
Yeah. Do you think, in your personal opinion, that counselors receive too many perks? For example, TTC passes, parking passes, housing allowances and stipends, dental benefits, health benefits, etc.
And my question, not to take away from Ebony, but my question is, one second, sorry. So as
you guys with me, I was looking for my headphones so I could isolate the noise.
As some of you may or may not know, there is a public outcry to fire interim city manager Tracy Cook. And I'm just wondering, do you agree with this or not, and why? Philip, do you want to start?
Yeah. Do you have any preference for which question I answer first?
No, that's up to you completely.
So I believe Ebony's question was about the perks that counselors receive. What's very interesting is I'm sort of, as someone who would not support this person as as mayor now based on what they were, but in 2010 I did vote for Rob Ford, and that was a big part of me voting for him was, well, my political ignorance. But one of the things I did see was a video that he took where he was talking about all these perks and benefits that city councilors got. He was pulling out these cards. He's like, we make so much money. Why do we get this for free? He's pulling them out. Obviously Rob Ford didn't do anything about getting rid of those perks because they still exist for counselors. But I mean, it was a good message. It was like, it was part of his whole, gravy train, whatever. And yeah, I do feel like there's too many perks to like city councilors do get paid very well. Like they can afford to like not have, they can have less perks. I'm not opposed to that. Yeah, I don't think they're necessarily deserving, really. They get paid well enough. As to your question about Tracy Cook, my knowledge on that is pretty limited. I actually did ask, as talking to Corey before we started, I'd asked Adam, he's running in Ward 11, I believe, University Rosedale, about the Tracy Cook situation, because I hadn't actually been, I heard her name. I knew she had been involved with like the encampment sweeps, which of course in itself in my mind is disqualifying. But I hadn't been made too much aware. But there's no reason that she should have just been so easily rubber stamped into the role. Like, I think the only person who voted against her appointment was Josh Matlow. Did not need to be such a unanimous. There needed to be more opposition to that. Like, there's no reason she should be in that role.
Thank you. Corey, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So I agree with Philip for the most part. I think that city councilors should make the average wage of workers across the city, the people that they're supposed to be representing. So I think, yeah, them receiving over $100,000 or whatever it is, I think it incentivizes people to also go for the position based on the money, and also puts them into, I guess, a different social sphere than the majority of the city, socioeconomic sphere than the majority of the city. Yeah, as far as housing allowances and all that stuff goes, well, I mean, I hope they live in the city if they're working for city council. I don't know why they should be given special accommodations over many people who cannot afford housing in the city, and those that can often have inadequate housing. So I don't know why they would have that. And same thing for TDC passes that we all have to pay to get to work. I don't know why they should be treated special. I mean, they're there to serve the city. They should be paid, like I said, an average worker's wage, which should be enough to survive and really enough to thrive in the city. It should be. And so I think that should be the restriction or the expectation on what councillors receive for their service. In terms of Tracy Cook, I'm not super well versed on the situation either. I do know that that she was involved in the planning and coordination of the violent encampment clearings that happened over last summer, and is a former police officer. And I think we see this often. It's almost like a club within city hall of the people that get these roles to have quite powerful decision-making power. Sorry, quite meaningful decision-making power in city hall and in the back rooms, who are not elected officials, who are not subject really to scrutiny, other than like a major audit or something like that. So I don't know. Just like John Burnside, who ran in the previous city election, did not win, and then was immediately given a manager position in city hall. And it was also involved in the violent encampment clearings. I don't think, as I said, I'm for abolishing the police, but I really don't think we need police in city hall. They're already quite close to city officials, and we needed to have constructive, positive goals in mind for addressing the issues that people in the city face, and the city and the land itself faces in the city. And so yeah, I'm really for I think democratizing the process of who becomes managers and really bringing citizens and community groups into City Hall. Yeah, that's what I would say about that.
Thank you so much. And you guys are in agreement, but this is where we're supposed to debate this. You guys have anything else that you want to add on the topic of the culture at City Hall?
Would you like me to?
I was thinking to myself, oh, sorry. Corey, would you like to go first?
If you want, Philip, you can
okay. I was just thinking, like, here's my concern. I think we might be in agreement with a lot of stuff. To be honest, my concern, it would have been nice to have Parthy here, because I've met Parthy. He's come on, or like he was canvassing and I met him. I know there's some stuff that I would disagree with him on. It would have been nice if Gary Crawford could have come, because I feel like there would have been so many, like a lot of disagreements with, oh God, yeah, I see it. I mean, it's great because now me and Corey and I will be able to differentiate between each other along the way, but man, it would have been nice. I mean, I didn't expect Gary Crawford, and that's out of arrogance to him, not as like an insult to you, if you know what I mean.
I understand.
But yeah, so another, I sort of thought, I know there's been a lot of conversation about actually, you know what? I'm gonna let Corey start if he has any thoughts.
The only thing I really wanted to mention, or I guess the one thing I kind of wanted to mention, was about the city's facilitation of land use, mostly for developers and for corporate use, and just the connections between the city council and city hall and corporate developers, and how it facilitates sort of the predatory practices that are being seen across the city, and taking advantage of the people there, and that really needs to be addressed. That it shouldn't be developers and people who are looking to only profit from the people, the working people, and everyone really who lives in the city, and that it should be actually the people who live here who should be closest to City Hall, who should be involved in the decision making that affects their daily lives and their communities that they want to live in and build. So that's a major concern for mine, and something I would definitely look to address if elected.
Absolutely. And we'll move along to category number 2, which is crime. So Ebony had to step out, so I'm going to read her question for her. In terms of crime, what kinds of urban design or neighborhood upgrades would you would you put forth to see happen that would improve, I guess, the overall crime rate? And my question, sorry, my question is that one of your opponent, or one of the mayoral candidates, predicated on him getting the mayor's chair, intends to bring back carding and for a tool for the police to use. And I'm just wondering, how do you respond to this and why? So Philip went last time. So Corey, why don't you take this one?
Sure, thanks. So I'll just address carding first. Carding has been a racist practice. It's been used to specifically target minority and especially minority youth in this city. It's an excuse for the police to harass and really detain anybody they choose to, which they definitely shouldn't have. So I'm totally against it, and yeah, it's just one more tool that can be used to just harass and oppress communities and neighborhoods within the city that are suffering, that maybe do have higher crime rates or whatever, but they probably also have not also they do have have poverty rates and other social ills. So and then to go into how to address urban design, I think there needs to be a serious investment in, like I said, social housing. I think everyone deserves the right to a modest home, and I think that alleviating, like pulling people off of the street, or just alleviating that stress of meeting your needs, I think that will help to decrease crime a lot, but not all of it. I mean, obviously, there's organized crime and such things. So along with putting people in housing, we also need to strengthen communities and make sure that they're supported to be as healthy as they can be. And that's through like community centers, community programs, making sure health care is adequately funded. And I know that's not exactly a municipal issue; it's federal and administered by the province. But still, the city, the hospitals and the doctors and the dental care is happening within this city, and so that needs to be addressed if it's not adequately meeting the needs of the people who live here. There should not be any private healthcare in this city. It shouldn't matter how rich you are. If you need healthcare, you should be able to get it, and no one should have an advantage because they have more money. So that's something that the city could look at regulating. Same thing with education. Education needs to be adequately funded. Our public school system has been chronically underfunded and unsupported for decades again. Many schools are undermaintained and have backlogs of work that are actually putting students and teachers and staff at risk. So those are things that we need to address to create healthy and constructive communities. So that's what I would look at doing, as well as trying to empower community groups to address issues themselves of petty crime, to look at models like restorative justice as well, and away from incarceration and away from state violence against people, trying to give people a chance at having a quality life, and not just pushing them into a system which just precipitates the same sort of criminal activity or whatever, or like a hole that you can't get out of because you have no way of working to do a criminal record, or you have no way of finding a job because you don't have skills or connections to make that happen. That's the kind of thing that I want to try and work on and develop in communities, and also set a good example at City Hall, that's against corruption, that's against exploitation, and try to lead by example in that sense, instead of what we have now, where the people of Toronto often are just left on their own in the wilderness to survive.
Thank you so much. Philip, go ahead.
As I mentioned too when we did our interview, the main source of crime is poor material conditions, or that's my understanding of it anyways. And so it really is all the things Corey is saying. Happy, healthy communities, they have less crime. and that's what we should strive for. Better social services that work, jobs that people can get, assistance rates that people can live on. And again, as Corey had sort of mentioned, a lot of these concerns and thoughts aren't necessarily municipal level things we can solve, but at least we can be advocates. As city councilors, we could be advocates for increasing rates to the province. About the federal disability benefit, we could be advocates in saying, you know, guys, it needs to happen, like that sort of thing. I think a big concern might be, of course, federalization, our distribution of powers, or things that we want to change to be better, but they're not within our scope to be able to. But yeah, material conditions. We need better social services. We just need to make our communities happier. Like, bottom line, happier communities that just they work and people can live in them. They're not struggling. You know, I've talked about a municipal minimum wage that ties with the living wage, because we can't just be working just to pay rent and food and to keep working. It's exhausting. You don't get anywhere in life, and that's how a lot of people in Scarborough are living. And that's when people turn to crime, when their life sucks and they see no hope. There's nothing they can do about it. Material conditions. That's my answer to. It's not perfect to which specific services or community subs, but improving material conditions. As for carding, am I allowed to ask you and which? I mean, I think I know which mayoral candidate you're talking about.
It's publicized. I'm not breaking any confidence. It's Blake Acton.
Oh yeah, so yeah. Like I knew you were talking about Blake Acton. But yeah, Corey sort of nailed it. I believe Matthew, you talked about in our interview where you sort of had the idea that there are good uses for it, and my sort of thought of that is we're sort of trusting police officers. If there are good uses for it, we'd be trusting individual police officers to make that decision, like to use it in a good way. And I don't know if I trust Toronto police to act in a way that would be like with the tools available to them. I feel like it sounds bad. I wouldn't expect them to act honorably, if that makes sense.
I understand.
Like it's not there's no positive interpretation of how I'm saying that, but no, I would disagree with bringing back carding.
Well, thank you. And before we move on to the next category, anything else you guys want to add on this topic?
I don't know about Corey, but I feel like we nailed it. I feel like we got some good stuff going.
I think you did too. Okay, let's move on. This is a lot easier with less candidates, as you'll see when you watch the mayoral debate. So housing crisis. I don't know if Ebony can hear me, but oh no. I'll just read her question for her, and then I'll read you mine. So her question is: should abandoned buildings be reappropriated as land to build shelters? Where or when are we going to be able to build the affordable housing? And my question is, obviously, you guys are aware we have a housing crisis in the city of Toronto. I'd like to know if you would support introduction of a rent freeze and or legalization of rooming houses. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. Corey, you went first last, so Philip, why don't you take this one?
Sure. So, as you said, we are in a housing crisis, no questions asked. The dream of home ownership for a lot of people is just a dream. I mean, we should call it that because it is unrealistic. It's not going to happen because we've let it sort of slip away. We just stopped building houses, and we've started sort of letting landlords dictate. Like we got rid of rent control on new units. I mean, that's the province, I know, but it's unreal. It's unreal how expensive rents are. It's unreal how much starter houses cost in the city. It's insane. Yes, I believe we should be introducing these sort of, I guess, missing middle builds, as they call them. Like, I think they should be building old school apartment buildings like they built in the 60s and 70s. More co-op housing. Sorry, Matt, I think you had said a second thing that wasn't specifically about.
So I said rent freeze and or legalization of rooming houses.
Yeah, so definitely, for the rooming houses specifically, council would repeatedly be like, instead of just doing it, instead of just making it happen, it's they keep sending it back to, get more reports on it, more reports. I think this is also partially a city hall culture question, but you gotta chill on reports. They gotta make decisions, and that includes, the legalization of multi-room housing. You know what I mean? And if we could get a rent freeze, once again, I do believe that is a provincial responsibility. But if we could get a rent freeze, obviously that would be 100%. I'd be interested in that. And as for Ebony's question, the hard thing is, it's like, yes, we need more shelters, temporary shelter spaces for the unhoused right now, especially because I don't know what building or what shelter it is right now. I had seen this timeline that was about them building more housing, but they were like shutting down a shelter in September, and then these units would be available in the spring. They're leaving people out in the cold in the winter, specifically, like the deadliest season of all. It blows me away. We need to figure out how to get unhoused people into homes. So the only reason I make that I specify is we do need shelters for temporary reasons, not as a long-term solution. Obviously, we need to get the unhoused into housing, but yeah, if we have abandoned buildings that Toronto can purchase to increase our housing stock in that way, and start with shelters and move towards proper housing, yeah, absolutely, that we should do that.
Thank you. Corey? Oh, you're muted.
Thank you once again letting me know. Yeah, so I'm very on board for introducing a rent freeze in the city. As I said earlier, I believe that I'm a big pusher of social housing. I think that we should be trying to drive for-profit housing out of the city and convert those corporate housings and those multi-unit landlordships or whatever into social housing of one kind or another, cooperative or public housing. But in the meantime, if a rent freeze was introduced, I would definitely support it. I think that rents, maybe even a rent reduction, because rents are just along with the cost of housing, or of single family housing, like Philip mentioned. Rents have also skyrocketed. They've kind of gone up and down, but they're way higher than any other inflation in the city or in the country even. So it's a problem not just in Toronto, not just in Canada, but around the world, as housing has turned more into a commodity. So I would definitely support a rent freeze. In terms of rooming housing, and then this kind of ties into my sort of position on shelters as well, is that I don't think it's ideal. I mean, we already have rooming housing for students, I believe. Maybe they call it student housing. I don't know what the difference is really, but it's just like I guess a home where people have multiple rooms in it and have a shared common space. And I think that it may not be legal, but it is already happening in parts of Scarborough. I know when I ran in Scarborough Agent Court, it was an issue up there that multiple people brought to me about rooming housing. it's sort of an interesting issue because it's not great quality housing. I don't think that long-term people want to be exactly, well, some people may want to do cohabitation. They may want to live with their friends or live with other people. But I think that a lot of people would like to have their own space. And so I don't think that the rooming housing is the most ideal situation. But I do think that in the meantime, until we can provide modest quality housing to everybody, I think that it is a viable option, and that it just should be regulated and should be ensured that people who are living in rooming housing are being respected and are not having health risks in their apartment, are not having issues with landlords or whatever. I think that needs to be regulated and watched for, because I think that you have situations where people are living in confined spaces, and it's just not right to treat humans like that, to treat other people like that, in my opinion, if we can avoid it. So this ties into my shelter thing. I think shelters are a band-aid solution. They're not a solution at all, just a band-aid to address a houselessness crisis in the city, a poverty crisis in the city. And so we really shouldn't be looking at expanding shelters, in my opinion. We should be moving right into expanding housing. But if there's an emergency and if there's a crisis and there's not enough not enough beds for people in the shelter system, and we have no other immediate way of providing those beds, then yes, I am on board with taking over unused buildings and converting them into temporary shelters, I suppose. I mean, a great example of this is I think, I don't know if it was 2014, but I think there was a really bad winter, and the shelter system was overburdened, and there was a debate at City Hall and even at the provincial and federal level about opening the city armory, which is just an empty building, to house the overflow of people experiencing houselessness. And the mayor, John Tory, at the time voted against it. You have to check the year, because I'm not sure on the year. But Gary Crawford also voted against it, our councillor. So they basically left people out on the street to die when an empty building was just sitting there. And their excuse was that it was not clear who was responsible for opening the doors of this building, which I think is just ridiculous. City Hall needs to take more action when people's lives are at risks, and should do so, even if it's a risk to their own position, I suppose. Yeah, and when and where are we going to get affordable housing? I think we should be fighting for it everywhere. I think all these corporate developments should be turned into social housing. It's possible. Maybe we can't just expropriate them because of the legal system that we're in, but we can put higher taxes on corporate landlords and on multi-unit landlords, and just make it unprofitable for them to continue to exploit people in the city, and then put that money into acquiring and developing social housing. So that's my answer to those questions.
Thank you very much. Philip, do you have anything to add?
I do just want to say, in defense of like the multi-room housing, I think there are people who would choose to live in that sort of way. Like not just like students. Of course, students is a good example. And yeah, I know, even though it is happening, I know it's happening. It's still better if it's legalized, just like, so there aren't problems that come from that. And of course, there are just like people who are closer to their families, I think, who would like sort of that setup, the room and the shared amenities sort of setup. Like I personally, I don't think that would be the setup that I would want, but I think the important thing is that things just do need to get built, and I think there are people who would choose to build that, and I think there are people who would choose to live there, and that's all I'll say about in defense of the rooming house.
Anything you want to add, Corey?
Yeah, and I would say I don't disagree with that. I would just say that that people shouldn't have to live there because of economic situation. Yeah, but definitely that it should be an option for people that want to live in that housing, that type of housing.
Okay. And with that, we move to the last category. It's the budget. So I'll read Ebony's question first and then mine second.
Hey, I'm here.
Oh, Ebony. Sorry. Yes, please go ahead and join us. And the last question about the budget. Go ahead.
Okay. I've got here, should we
I
defund the
do that
police
with
and take the money from their side of the budget and reintegrate it into the affordable housing initiative instead or elsewhere?
Can I do a Coke Zero?
And then my question would be, how would you fix the budget for the city? Please cite 2 examples of what you would do. Corey, go ahead.
Yeah, so we should definitely defund the police and put those resources, not just defund them, but take police stations as well and turn them into community centers or whatever else can be used by the community in a positive way. But yeah, we should definitely defund the police and put that money into both social housing, but also social services to better help people in need instead of sending police to help people that are in crisis, mental health or otherwise. We should have social workers be doing that, and we should be paying them well. It's ridiculous that the Ford government put a 1% wage cap on public service workers, but exempt police and fire from that wage cap. It's a totally sexist law. The city should have done more to fight against it. I know that unions are fighting against it currently, and they have my full support. And I think that so I think that that's what we should be doing with that part of the budget. So how would I fix the Toronto budget? Well, so taking money from police is a big cornerstone. But we should definitely be setting up funds to build social housing. When I challenged the Gerard Quarry development, Gary Crawford cited that we didn't need social housing because we already have some in Scarborough. It's not too far away. But if you look at the social housing, the co-op list, they're all closed across the city. Their wait lists are closed. Unless you have a special way of getting on the wait list, I believe it's totally inaccessible to anyone in the city now. So we need to seriously set up investment for that, and to facilitate the acquisition of properties to that. So that's where a major section of the budget should go. Another big issue is infrastructure, specifically transit. I think that as Philip said, we need to get stuff done. I think that transit goes back and forth all the time in the city, and I know again it's reliant on money from the province and federal as well. But we need to make sure that we're adequately serving the people in the city and in Scarborough Southwest, so they can get to where they need to go. That they're not stranded out in the middle of nowhere for an hour or for whatever. But that also that we have just quality infrastructure. Like the Scarborough RT is falling apart, and I know they're going to tear it down, and they have the subway going through now. But there's going to be years where there's no adequate service in Scarborough, in the north of Scarborough. I know we're running in Scarborough Southwest, but we're counselors in the entire city, and it's not like if part of the city is suffering that other parts aren't going to suffer as well. So we need to make sure that we properly plan and invest in infrastructure, not just public transit, but also things like bike lanes, park spaces, community centers, sporting facilities, all those kinds of things. There needs to be that needs to be a major section of the budget, in my opinion. I'll just leave that there.
Go ahead, Philip.
I mean, so that was I wasn't doing like a weird like W symbol. I was doing 3 for line 3 because like that I talked to Matthew about it. The dithering around like what to do with line 3 has resulted in it's going to get shut down for 8 years. It'll be shuttle buses, and shuttle buses are completely inadequate. And the further you sort of go from the subway infrastructure, the harder it is traveling on the TTC. I realize this isn't really about the budget, but I thought Corey brought up a good point because we are going to get screwed with the shutdown of line 3, and that does affect Scarborough Southwest. Like that's still in our ward. Like obviously it goes further than the ward. It affects the students. The University of Toronto Scarborough campus is like there. Like it's a shit deal, and God, one of those things are I wish Gary Crawford were here so he could ask why nobody was on city council who cared what happened with the line 3. to make sure a plan was in place more readily, properly, that wouldn't screw over so many people. They really fucked up on the line 3. Now, for Ebony's question specifically, I did mention before that I would like to take the amount that I'd stated was $400 million from the Toronto Police. You know, and yeah, that's to go into social housing, social services, because as I said, it's material conditions that are the source of crime. And I do imagine if you say out loud you want to take away money from the police, that people would accuse you of being soft on crime. But of course, I would argue that, you know, trying to combat the source of crime would make you strong on crime, really. Now, I think Corey had a better, more specific answer of like where that money would go. But yeah, I would take $400 million at least from the Toronto Police. If I want to be more cynical, so 400 million is what I would want to do. If I'm talking realistically, you're fighting the rest of council, you're fighting the mayor. I would say at the very minimum, fight any budget that gave them an increase at all, because you know that's sort of what will be proposed. Because every year they ask for more money, and it's not like their successes ever improve, but they ask for money. My very minimum is $0. My desire, of course, is more, 400 million, but minimum $0. As for your question specifically, actually, sorry, could you phrase your question again for me?
Yeah, so I asked, how would you fix the budget for the city? Please cite 2 examples of what you would do. Obviously, that wouldn't fix the budget, but you know, it's in the right direction of it.
Right. So I guess like one of my answers is the police, you know, taking 400 million, that's a significant amount of money. And also like canceling those security contracts that are made just to harass the unhoused people in parks. Like, what a waste of money. We're constantly saying we can't afford good things, but we can afford easily security contracts to harass unhoused people because we don't care. Like, societally, we don't care. It's just it's cruel, it's needless. I would cancel those contracts. They're garbage. And I feel like the uncomfortable truth, that it's like the hard thing to say. I feel like if anyone says that they can improve social services or city services without increasing taxes, they're lying to you. I do believe we need to, and that's the hard sell, right? I do believe we need to increase property taxes. Again, it is a hard sell, but that's how you fund services. And of course, our budget. We also need to not reward. We need to not reward mediocrity. What I said with the police, but also something that you had brought up with the TTC is facing a deficit, and then they gave a huge bonus to the CEO. That doesn't make sense. Why? What? That just doesn't financially make sense. You're heading for a deficit, and then you give the CEO a bonus. A bonus for what? What is that for? So I feel like we don't reward mediocrity. We fund things that prevent crime, which is not the police, and unfortunately, we increase taxes.
Thank you. So since I let Philip start, I'll let Corey close first. Corey, this is your opportunity to make your closing statement, anything that you want to say, and ultimately tell the viewers why on voting day, October 24th, they should vote for you. Go ahead.
Sure. So I kind of wanted to address the kind of what Philip was saying, because it made me think a little bit. So I'll just throw that into my closing statement. Just around the taxing of a thing. I agree that property taxes should be increased, but I think that they primarily should be increased for the wealthy in this city. I think that that they enjoy the most out of the city, and that they should be paying the most to cover other costs that are necessary for the city to be healthy and for it to function. So I agree with a tax hike on property, but I think that primarily it should hit the wealthiest people in the city and the wealthiest corporations or institutions. And so in my closing statement, I will say that I will not vote for any budget that includes money for the police. I will support other policy that removes money from the police funding and resources and puts it into other places. But I will not vote for any budget that includes funding for the police, which only act to or primarily and majority act to harass and stigmatize and attack poor people in this city, minorities in this city, workers in this city. When people go on strike, it's the police that go there and protect the business and make sure that capital is still being made while workers are out on the line fighting for a decent job, fighting for a decent life. When poor people have nowhere to go and they decide to set up camp on public land in a park or wherever, it is the police that attack them and remove them from land. Activists, the same thing. People block rail blockades in solidarity with Wet'suwet'en or with whoever across this country, Indigenous people who've been under attack for hundreds of years on this land. And it is the police that come and remove protesters and stop people from, taking civic action and standing up for things they believe in. So I will not be supporting any police action, who I believe are the arm of force of the capitalist state and of this city. That is through my own personal experiences as well as I think historically a historical precedent. So as you can count on. But for me at City Hall, why I would like your vote, I would like your vote for City Hall if you want workers to be supported in the city, if you want exploited and oppressed people to be supported in the city. This is something that is dear to me and that I truly believe in. I believe in protecting the environment and the habitats that keep us healthy in the city. I believe in properly funding and supporting infrastructure, which facilitates us having happy, healthy, and positive lives in the city. The city is a beautiful place, and it can be but it's not beautiful for everyone, and it really can be. We have the wealth, we have the resources, we have the expertise, we have the organizational capacity. We can make it that way if we choose. But we just the leadership at City Council through my entire lifetime, and I think since its existence, I would say has not done that and has worked primarily for the wealthy and for corporate interests. And I think that our outgoing mayor is a perfect example of that, who worked as a CEO for Rogers, still receives money from Rogers while he's the acting mayor of this city. I think it's absolutely appalling, and those are things that I want to change at City Hall if elected. I'll fight to change. Like Philip mentioned, it'll be an uphill battle. I don't believe there will be that many people who will be elected, just because the people running currently, among them that I know about, there are not that many people in each ward running on these kinds of issues. And so it will be an uphill battle, but I will try and do my best to address the issues that people in Scarborough face and people in Toronto face. Yeah, and we'll see what we can get done. And at the very least, I will hopefully point out all the contradictions and the terrible things that City Hall facilitates when they're given a mandate by the people of the city without standing up for the people of the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Philip, go ahead.
Well, I do want to say, Corey, I appreciate getting to hear some of your thoughts, because I haven't heard from you yet, and it's cool to get to meet you. I think it would be great to collaborate with you at some point, because I think you got a lot of good ideas. I think we're on the same page for a lot of this stuff. The thing that I keep saying is I consider myself a lower income person, and the crushing weight of the city motivates me, and I would feel that desire, that necessity to fix those issues, to make a city that works for everyone, not just the wealthy, because they don't need the help, and the city is already great for them, and we can make the city great for everyone else. I think it can be done. And I think so. In my mind, my key focus would be my key focus, I keep stating, is affordability of the city, things that we can do. So as I've stated, I've had an idea of having a minimum wage that's a living wage. It's not quite enough. Obviously, more needs to be done. I would like to introduce a municipal broadband alternative that's like owned by the city to provide a lower cost internet for people. And just, competition for Rogers and Bell. The theory, of course, is that competition brings down prices. So a public utility, yeah, let's get that. Let's get that going. Yeah, so it's been great. Matthew, I appreciate getting to chat with you again. Like what a great host. Ebony, it's good to meet you. I know, I don't know if you're floating around, but I appreciate good questions. Me and Corey are on the same page, I think, on a lot of this stuff, and little bit of differences. And I think it would be nice to work with that. Because I'm having a good time. I feel like meeting other candidates, other people, running a lot of them with the pure intent where they just want to make the city better, to make the city work for everyone. And like there's a lot of candidates that I get the sense that is truly what they're going for. And it's nice to collaborate with all of those people. And Matthew, of course, it's great that you're giving us this platform, because it has, this election, especially as I've said before, has been so quiet, and we need somebody to ask us these questions. Obviously we can do as much as we can getting ourselves out there, but obviously that's us presenting ourselves at our best. So I appreciate your questions, and I appreciate you hosting this.
Well, I appreciate both of your supports. This debate was ultimately easier than the previous one. You know what? For anyone who didn't attend this debate, they missed out. They missed out on hearing your ideas. They missed out on hearing Corey's ideas. And that's a shame. They'll have to watch it on YouTube. But I really want to thank you guys for coming and hanging in there. I know we started late. I really appreciate you. I wish you guys nothing but luck on your campaign trail. I'm excited. I can't wait to see what happens next for the city of Toronto. Ebony is.
No, I was here listening. I was muted because I was in the van with my kids. My one child is sick. We just had to go pick up some stuff for her to breathe better. But I heard your points, and I was thrilled to be part of this. And I think that you both have a very level-headed approach to what's going on, and that the board will be beneficial, just regardless of which one you win. Go in the house, honey. I know your tummy hurts.
So on behalf of Ebony and myself, thank you guys for attending, and we're done. And I just thank you guys. Both of your websites will be included in the show notes on YouTube and on Spotify and everywhere else except Apple. Like I said, we are excited for the future of Toronto. Thank you.
Thank you.